you check the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego? Yeah.
And we are here to discuss the brand new release, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. This is a new Resident Evil movie that was released to theaters that has nothing to do with the previous, I think, 6 entries in the Resident Evil franchise that were all handled by Paul W.S. Anderson, and his wife, Mia Jovovich.
Yes.
Or Mila Jovovich, whatever the hell
I've heard
it is.
Yeah, tomato, whatever it may be. I've been corrected by some and confirmed by others. I don't know.
Now, this is also separate from the 3 Resident Evil CG movies, or was it 2 movies and then a series, or whatever it was?
Yeah, there was the 2 movies, and then the Infinite Darkness, I think, was the one.
Which was awful.
It was basically a movie that they just broke.
It was awful, though. Oh, God, it was so bad.
And from what I understand, those are the only ones really that tied directly into the video games, as opposed to being adaptations in that regard. So,
yeah, very much so.
Yeah, man. You know, I still remember seeing this OG in theaters, and I was pretty disappointed with the first Resident Evil film with Mia and her husband working together. But I gotta say, after watching this one, I think I appreciate it a little bit more.
So you did not like this one? Go ahead, launch into it, Fuego. What are your overall thoughts?
It's not going to be a tirade because there were aspects of it that I enjoyed, but yet this is definitely going to be marked off for me as one of those major missed opportunities because I thought the script was pretty bad for this. The dialogue was not good. We didn't really get a lot of proper character development, and
the characters were like changed for no reason.
Oh, most notably, you know who most notably is changed for no reason, and I had.
You mean Carlos? I mean Leon?
No.
Oh, because Leon was basically Carlos.
Yeah, they made Leon up to be totally wimpish and everything, which I didn't like. But no, it's a character who adorns himself with sunglasses most often.
Oh, Wesker, of course.
And they did some major changes with his character, which I did not. And yet, that's the thing. Like, I've seen that guy play villains before. His name, I think, is Tom Hopper.
Dude, you see, he's the ape man in Umbrella Academy.
Yep. Yeah. And he's also he did a little Game of Thrones, if I'm not mistaken. And I actually saw him in a movie earlier this year called SAS Red Notice, not to be confused with that awful Netflix movie, but it was with Ruby Rose and Tim, and also the girl who plays our Jill Valentine in this. She was in that film as well. SAS was great, and so it was interesting to see her name. I brought it up, but I know I did. Hannah John Kamen, who I know some people were up in arms about changing the ethnicity of Jill Valentine. I didn't really give a shit about that. You know, I thought that and even Robbie Amell as Redfield, I thought the casting was pretty good for this, but they just gave them this trashy script that just so little to chew on for character development. Some of the design of everything, you know, like the mansion looked cool and everything, and some of the effects, but it wasn't as gory as I was expecting it to be. I mean, I really had a lot of gripes with this movie, and so yeah, not that I went in with Johannes Roberts of all people, you know, but he's relatively capable, 47 meters down, and you know, I didn't tend to the other side of the door.
Don't want to answer.
Yeah, I mean, he's an okay director. He's just not like of the most thought-provoking variety, but I thought he could make a serviceable Resident Evil film, and yet back to my first point, this has made me appreciate the stupidity of the more action-centric ones more. So this was really like the best aspects of the Silent Hill movie, the first one, and the worst aspects of Doom, the movie, for me.
Oh, see, I disagree. I think you're being a little harsh. I gotta be honest. I think you're being a little harsh. So my opinion, and this movie was Resident Evil 1 and 2 crammed together in one movie. A little bit. I mean, Nemesis is the big part of 3, so, I mean, without Nemesis, you don't really have that. You did have other aspects of the Resident Evil franchise, but unfortunately, at times, you only got one representation. Like, you got one dog, you got one liquor, you know, like, there's not a lot by way of repetitive monsters in this movie, and here's the thing. I think that there were aspects of this film that were good. Like, there were aspects that felt like, okay, yes, we need to tackle Resident Evil via this route. Like, this, they're retelling the game stories, and I think that's good. But they made some changes, and I don't think those changes worked overall. I think that it could have been a really, really well done movie, even if you just focus on the first movie or the first game or the second game. Even if you combine them together, I think it could have been done better than we got here. Like, it feels like they put energy into aspects that didn't help the movie and took away energy from aspects that would have helped the movie. So I guess,
agree.
I guess we could get into it as we go along. But yeah, overall, it was a unfortunately substandard thing. It's not terrible. Like, if you're young, you're going to like this movie because you're not going to care as much about, certain aspects of it. Because I would have loved this movie if I saw it when I was younger. But, it's set in 1998, and it feels like a movie from the late 80s, or late 90s, rather. So it's, I guess it's appropriate in that sense, but it just wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. While I like the fact that it followed the storyline more closely than the Mia Jovovich movie. I think the Mia Jovovich movie did certain aspects better than this one, but ultimately the story is way closer in this one. So I like that, and I like certain aspects as we go, but yeah, ultimately I was a little, unfortunately, disappointed by the whole thing as a whole.
Yeah, and that's where I was. Once again, I always talk about the goddamn burden of expectation, and with this claiming that it was going to be more of a horror film than an action-centric film, I do believe, as far as like mood and ambiance, they achieved that. So that's something that I will give them credit for, and just the look and the vibe of it and everything. But I didn't like the added prologue, all the orphanage stuff. I thought that didn't really work and was ultimately unnecessary. And then the stuff that I wanted them to flesh out and focus more on, especially once we finally get to the mansion, they kind of rush through that stuff. And so that was where, and
then they touch on my favorite Resident Evil game at one point. They touch on my favorite one, and I'm like, oh, we're not going to get that story, are we? Because we get the Ashford twins, which is from Code Veronica. Yep. And I fucking love Code Veronica. That's my favorite Resident Evil game. It's the only one they haven't talked about remaking yet, and the Ashford twins are in this big, and I'm like, yes, Ashford twins. But that was unfortunately, that was ultimately just fan service because it wasn't a big part of the overall story.
Yeah, more so just an Easter egg in that regard. And yet also the reveal of a character showing up in the post credits isn't really a surprise at all, because it's listed on so much material from the casting on the Wikipedia and the IMDb and all this other stuff. I know she's become almost kind of an anti-hero of sorts as the game's progressed, if I remember correctly. Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I did like the final boss aspect of it. Again, without spoiling, you did see in the trailer. They showed it in the trailer. Yeah, that actor's great. He was actually in the back half of the American Horror Stories. He played the president. So he was a lead character in the back half of American Horror Stories, and he did a great job in this. And then we actually got there were some aspects of the show, or I'm sorry, of the game that we really legitimately got. We got the dog, we got the liquor, we got what we saw in the trailer again. So we got the tyrant, and I thought that was dope. And they even play a beat from the game. How they end it is literally the beat from the game, as dumb as it is in the circumstance in which they put it in the game. It's on a rooftop. Here it's in a subway train, and so it doesn't make quite as much sense. And
that's where I was thinking, were they incorporating aspects of Zero into that?
I think so, right? The one where the thing is collapsing the train behind them, and I agree. I felt like they were trying to do that a little bit as well. But
I remember playing that on GameCube, and I was hoping Rebecca Chambers was going to be in this, so maybe they're saving her for a potential sequel or something. I don't know,
but let's be honest. I mean, again, if you look at it from the sense that it's a late 90s movie like Resident Evil was, this could very easily be Earth 2's Resident Evil series that began instead of the Mia Jovovich series. Right? If this began back in 1998 when they play the movie to take place, Like, I think this could have been that universe's Resident Evil series, and I think people would have liked this more. So here's the thing. Ultimately, where I landed was this movie does a lot of Resident Evil things right that the other movies did wrong, but then it's also doing certain things wrong that makes it not as fun as the other Resident Evil's movies were. I added one too many S's in there, but nonetheless. I don't know. What do you think, Fuego?
It's just, as I was saying, it had a lot of potential, I feel like. And when I walked out of the theater, I was quite upset.
Really?
But then,
why, though? Why? Like,
because it
expand.
felt like in a lot of ways, I felt like, you know, since I'm familiar with these characters from the video games, that I understood more motivation and felt more aggravation for those motivational changes, you know, in Leon, in Wesker, and yet, I don't know. Apocalypse is my favorite of the original films because of the fact that it followed the video games much more closely, and so that's why this one I guess was expecting a whole lot more, and I thought
it did really follow the video games more closely.
It did. It really did, and I'll give them credit for that. And I mean, since I know we've touched on the story at least a little bit.
Hit the acting.
Yeah, the acting. I thought our Claire Redfield was really good as well, and she is our main character in this, at least in my estimation. And that's
just reminded me of something I have to complain about, though.
Was it her from a performance
standpoint?
It
wasn't the performance standpoint, but it was something that, again, I think would apply in the more story category, which we already kind of covered, is that unfortunately it had at least 5 moments where a character is about to get gotten by something and then someone else shoots it off. Like, at least 5, maybe 6 times it happened, even in, like, the most tense moments in the film. Like, people thought in Godzilla vs. Kong, or one of the Godzilla movies, that maybe it was the King of All Monsters, that, like, people were almost gonna get killed, and then Godzilla, like, shows up and blasts his beam to stop them. Like, it happens 3 times in the movie. Dude, this shit literally happens 5 or 6 times in this movie, where someone's about to get got by either zombies or a creature or something, and then someone else shoots it off, and they play it like it's a big fucking surprise. Like, oh my god, can you believe that person shot that shit off? And it's like, yeah, bitch, you did it 4 times already. Of course I believe it. Like, I'm done with it. Of
course by now.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. Did any of that rub you the wrong way like it rubbed me the wrong way?
I guess I just didn't take as much notice of it. I thought that it succeeded so much better as a horror movie in, like, ambiance and vibe and, you know, setting and how it was lit and some of the, you know, design, set design and things of that nature. In comparison with, I felt like the action in this movie was not handled anywhere near as well as in those action-centric Mila Jovovich ones.
Sure,
you know?
That's fair.
And so that was one of its faults. I know they were, at least for me, as far as my personal taste. Not that I really enjoyed that they went that route with all those other films previously, but yet when they tried to do action in this, it just wasn't as effective. And I feel like that's why when characters did actually die, like, they were cutting away. You know, like the truck driver early on with his dog. You know, I mean, I thought we were going to see some really cool practical, and we didn't. I mean, at least not for the most part. But yet, you know, I thought the liquor looked cool. I thought the tyrant, when we finally got that reveal, was pretty damn rad. So
I like that it kept evolving too. And the fact that they did the eyeball and the shoulder, I was like, yes, bitch. Yeah. Like, that's the key, exactly right? You know. So they did do fan service, and that's the thing. I think I'm falling for the fan service. While also having no choice but to dissect some of the decisions that the film made, because it could have been so much cooler if they had just done certain things. Like, it's so weird. They made some decisions that were right along with the games that made sense, and then they made some decisions that were like, sure, let's make this character a fucking weird pussy that doesn't make sense. That not only is the rookie, but he's, like, scared like a bitch the whole movie, like, and he's not anything like the character at all, but we're gonna, like, say, hey, throw this on because the character in the game wears this. And, like, I don't know, that whole bit really pissed me off. So, like, there were some things that upset me. There were some things that I was happy with. I liked the liquor. I thought the liquor was straight from the game, more so than anything we got from all 6 Resident Evil movies, except Wesker. right? Wesker was the only thing that they actually adhered to from the games in those movies. No, literally, there was one scene. No, there was one scene specifically from the game where he throws his glasses at your character that was literally reproduced in the movie with Mia Jovovich, where he throws his glasses at Mia Jovovich. That was literally a moment lifted from the game. So they did adhere to some aspects, but it all had to do with Wesker in the original series.
Well, I just felt like, so the gripes that you're having with Leon and how he was portrayed and some of his motivation and everything.
Carlos, you mean?
Yeah, more or less. But I felt like they deliberately tried to make Wesker significantly more sympathetic of a character.
Agreed.
Especially with what happens at the end without spoiling it or anything. And so that was where I took major exception. I was like, because if you played the games, you know there's an element about that character as far as, like, are they who we think they are? And they still do that, but just not as much of like a, you know, there's like a real significant punch to it. And yeah, I felt like the way they did the relationship with him and Valentine, that's one of the reasons why they just couldn't do the video game justice in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. I just keep circling back to the fact that I feel like there was a lot of really cool potential here. And what does the casual viewer, somebody who, like, if somebody hasn't played a single Resident Evil game, doesn't know shit about the franchise, what do you think they would think of this movie? Do you think stuff is explained well enough for them? I
don't know that it's explained well enough, but I think it's...
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't thought of it like that.
I don't know. Since I've played... I mean, granted, I've only played up through 4, so I can't really comment a lot beyond that, but...
Well, there's not a lot beyond that. I mean, it was all 1 and 2. So, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to hate on this movie. It's very much like the Mortal Kombat reboot that we got this year. There were aspects that I liked. There were aspects that I was like, oh, you could have done that so much better. So, I don't mind if they continue this. I would like to see them continue this continuity. I do think Robbie Amell was a little... Like, so the main character that plays Chris Redfield is the brother of Arrow, the guy that plays Arrow on the CW show. Right. Stephen Amell is Arrow, and Robbie Amell is the brother who was in, if I'm not mistaken, I think Robbie Amell was in one of the Hunger Games movies or a couple of them. He's been in a lot of stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like Tomorrow People maybe or something. I think he did.
He's done a lot, and look, I mean, I think, again, on its surface level, like, I've seen on my Facebook a lot of different reactions. Some saying this movie's not good at all. Some saying this movie's good for fan service. Some from fans saying this is the first good Resident Evil movie. Like, so it's pleasing some people. Just when you look at it at a more film critic perspective, it falls apart a little bit more than if you look at it from a fan perspective, I guess, is maybe the easiest way to describe it.
No, that's the case with a lot of things that we watch, I would imagine, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's why people, you know, savaged Rise of Skywalker, and why people like Red Letter Media are savaging the new Ghostbusters movie, you know? Because
look, they don't have invalid points. I gotta be honest. I liked the movie, and I cried at the end, but when I watched their review, I was like, yeah, they're right there. Yeah, they're right there. Yeah, they're right there.
It was just... Well, it was... In that movie, without really getting into it too much, it was really just the fact that the third act was...
Literally Ghostbusters 1 all over again.
Complete redo. And it made me wonder if they had screened to test audiences and there just, like, wasn't enough. Because in that movie, the stuff with the kids and everything different that they did, forging their own way, that's what I thought was the best part of it. It was when they were going for those member berries that I felt like... I'm like, this is legit, like, the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So...
Do you have any other thoughts on either the music or the sound design, or specifically the effects? Again, there's a lot of CG heavy stuff here. Did you like the zombies? Did you like how the zombie... Here's the thing. My issue with the zombies is, like, it felt like they didn't know whether they wanted to commit to slow zombies or fast zombies. And all the zombies had these weird screeching abilities so they're clearly away from anything that human bodies can actually produce sound-wise. So, like, it's weird. They're trying to do their own thing, and I think it's a little bit much. But at times, the way they shot it, it was really intense. There was an entire scene where Chris was fending off zombies in pitch blackness, and the only thing you saw was the muzzle flashes illuminating the scene when it would happen. And like I was like, that's a really interesting way to do it, but it also feels kind of cheap the way you're doing it. Like you're just trying to save money on this scene instead of like having everything actually play out in the light. I don't know. Did you get any of those feelings at all?
Dude, I got the vibe that this was most definitely, like, I'm curious if I can pull up what the budget was for it. Because
so I've heard either 25 or 40.
It felt so
It felt
much
like 25.
Yeah, budget 25 million.
Yep.
Yeah. So compared to the amount that they were throwing at those ones that Paul W.S. Anderson was making, the big action-y extravaganzas, yeah, I felt like we didn't see some of those kills that I was mentioning and that I was hoping we were going to see, where they would just cut away and you just assume character is dead, because they just didn't have the budget to do the practical or to generate the CGI. You know, back to the Tyrant, I thought it was a very cool look and very faithful, and I also did enjoy the fact that there was conversation coming from that particular character as the alteration was happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did, especially with the look, because we get some people at times where I guess maybe the virus has spread far enough that they do look like straight up zombies, more so the Ramiro vibe that we had in the original game. But then throughout the most of it, especially when like the huge crowds were like at those gates or, you know, whatever the heck it was, that was where I was like, okay, yeah, this is much more rage zombie, you know, another Ramiro, the crazies that I bring up a lot of the time, because there's more of these infected films that we've got over the last decade or so that they lean more so towards that, which is why they're fast and they're kind of crazy and everything in that regard, hence the title, I guess. So
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know if I'd go that far personally. Yeah, I'm kind of slowing my roll a little bit as hearing your thoughts and a little more rumination throughout this discussion.
Like, there are aspects that are enjoyable. There are aspects that are like clearly decisions made based on lack of funds or whatever. It's such a weird mixed bag. Again, as someone that's I've played this series literally since the first game. When I got the first game on PlayStation 1, and the fucking, we are going to the mansion, and it's the mansion story, and the dogs bursting through the window, like...
Back when they had the live action opening, remember?
Yeah, yes,
because
exactly.
They changed it later on.
Exactly. And then the birds, the crows through the window, and like all this stuff. Like the first game definitely can sustain an entire movie, but they went ahead and combined it with part 2. And I feel like at that point you're overstuffing the turkey a bit, because you're, instead of focusing on one duo, now you have to focus on 2 duos, right? Instead of Chris and Jill, you're also having to focus on Claire and Chris and Jill and Leon, right? You can just focus on one pair. But in this one, you have to focus on 2 pairs plus other characters that show up. So, like, it feels like overstuffing the turkey didn't do this thing any favors. I feel like definitely the first game can sustain an entire fucking full-length feature easily. And done well. Like, imagine setting up this mansion, make the mansion a character, just like in Sex and the City, where New York is the 5th character. Like, they kind of did, but not really. Like, I feel like
all the Red Queen bullshit, which I hated.
Well, the Red Queen shit was completely new for the movies, though.
I know, and yet I hated that stuff.
I did too. That's what I'm saying. But if you focused on, if you did Resident Evil 1 the way they were doing Resident Evil 1 before they decided to shove Resident Evil 2 up Resident Evil 1's ass in this movie, I feel like Resident Evil 1 would have been a really good translation. It could be a really excellent survival horror movie if you just focus on that first game and then boom, focus on the second game and tie it in with aspects of the first movie. Like, they really missed an opportunity just shoving this shit together. I feel like this is the Marvel's Daredevil of video game movies, instead of Marvel doing like a Guardians of the Galaxy, but a Resident Evil kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
No, it does. And you're using the perfect analogy of overstuffing a turkey with us recording this on Thanksgiving.
Fair play, fair play.
Which is funny to me. But yeah, each game could most definitely sustain, and I can understand the motivation, because these things were happening concurrently in Raccoon City, and then but then again, Zero, everything with, Rebecca and the convict guy that she hooks up with in that, and who you played with or whatever, if I remember. That was happening concurrently too, or I guess it was a little bit before and a little bit after, just like 3 was kind of, 2.5 almost to be. I don't know, man. I definitely think that the ambition was unnecessary of trying to combine the two and have those separate storylines, because I do think that Leon, Carlos, and Claire, that they were focused upon a lot more than I wanted, and I felt like there was not enough time spent at the mansion where, there was so much that they could have done there with those characters. It was like, oh, we're gonna have some scientist, worker, whatever people attack us, and then
they actually made the mansion set, they made the police station set, and then they underutilized both. Yeah. And like they even showed the keys at one point, and then they threw the keys away. Like she unlocks one thing and then leaves all the keys behind. I'm like, no, you could have used the keys. Like the keys or something, like your characters should go and try and find the keys. If you made Resident Evil 2 as a film and it was like a mixture of like survival horror and Indiana Jones, where you had to find the objects to progress, find these keys to progress into these new areas and stuff, like why are they not taking advantage of this? I
just wonder if that would bore like the casual audience.
I don't think it's all in the writing, bro. It's all in the writing.
Aspect. But yeah, I guess the National Treasure movies were very popular. Obviously, those owe a major debt to Indiana Jones. Far superior, except for the 4th one. So, yeah, it would just really, you would have to have a very capable screenwriter to devise.
I think it can be done.
Well, they're presumably on a budget of this size. It's going to make money overseas. It's not done very good so far, but I think it's going to make enough money for them to continue along with this, because they are wanting to have this be a new series of films. They started, from what I was reading, the pre-production on this when the final chapter was being shot. Like, they already had all their plans for a reboot in place.
Well, this one was the one that was supposedly produced by James Wan, right?
It's not that I'm aware.
See, I thought he was a part of a Resident Evil project for a while. Maybe he disassociated, or maybe I'm just pulling things out of my hat. But anyway, look, I'm wrong. Clearly, that's not the case. But
okay, I will say that I think Johannes Roberts has directing talent, but he wrote the script for this, and I don't know if he has talent as a screenwriter. And
I think more people should have told him he needs to correct some things.
Yeah, and so that's where if you bring in a different person or a different team of people or whatever to actually get a badass sequel script going, maybe tackle some of that Code Veronica stuff or some of the things in 4 where we took... Was it 4 where we changed continents and where we were in Africa, if I remember correctly? Yeah.
The Las Plagas.
Yeah. Although I was going to say, I know some people took very obvious and understandable exception for the setting of that, and you're running around and shooting and everything, so I don't know if they would recreate that necessarily, but this, from a stylistic standpoint, I think shows a lot of possibility to breathe new life into the franchise, but I'm going to keep circling back to the script and the issues there.
Agreed. So did the special effects do it for you?
They did. Yeah, I mean, it was CGI heavy, but then again, this franchise has always been CGI heavy. I could have gone with a little bit more interesting and gruesome and like Nicotero style practical for some of these people. I mean, I guess the dog, when it was getting a little feral or whatever, looked cool enough, but yeah, we just didn't get to see, aside from the iconic, with the turn and everything that's is from the first game and that's in the trailers and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the coolest looking of all of the like humanoid.
Agreed. Everything else was
like,
cut really short because it was just shown in flashes via muzzle flashes or whatever.
Quick little glimpses, man, and there were so many quick glimpses of these things. Aside from when you had your liquor and your tyrant that we talked about, they lingered on that stuff a little bit more so, because that's obviously where the budget went, was trying to make those look badass, and they at least achieved that in those. Like music, score, sound design was solid enough, but from a score standpoint, no, it's
nothing really stood out.
No, and especially after listening to the score that Marilyn Manson did, and I know everybody hates Manson now. It is what it is. But his score for the first Resident Evil movie is fucking awesome. It's really, really good. It's on par with a lot of the stuff that the guy who discovered him, Trent Reznor, was doing. That score goes hard, dude. It's really, really good. And revisiting this original movie, it's where I appreciate it more. I don't know if I necessarily like it more, but I just there was more that I can like tip my hat to. I suppose. The second and the fourth one are still my favorites in the original franchise of this. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, guys. I mean, ultimately, would you recommend people watch it, Fuego?
If you're a big fan of the games, yeah, go give it a shot. Aside from that, if you're just like casual curiosity,
just wait till it comes home.
Yep, till it's streaming somewhere, or whatever equivalent that may be. It's probably going to end up on Netflix, I would imagine, since Netflix is handling the CG stuff. Mm-hmm. And there is still the live-action TV series that is playing for Netflix too. So I don't know where that is being placed as far as timeline goes, but there is still that project in development as well. So
I didn't realize that. No, okay.
Interesting. They're milking this mofo, yo.
Apparently so. So why don't you guys let us know in the comments down below, what did you think of Resident Evil? Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. I mean, we had our gripes, we had our loudings of certain aspects of the film. I'd be very curious to know what you guys think. So let us know in the comments down below. Thank you very much to Fuego for joining up. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel directly the way that you do. We greatly appreciate all of you guys and your support of the channel. Thank you very much. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
And Kristopher, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.